This segment of the CU podcast is sponsored by NordVPN. It's what I use to keep myself safe online, and you can too. If you care about the security and safety of your online presence, take control of your internet experience today with NordVPN. I've used NordVPN when traveling, at the airport, when accessing public Wi-Fi, at a restaurant, or even when I just want internet privacy at home.
With NordVPN, all of your internet data stays safe behind a wall of next-generation encryption, and they change your IP twice to cover your web traffic with an extra layer of security. They have a strict no-logs policy. They don't track, collect, or share your private data. It's none of their business. Choose from 5,400 plus servers in 59 countries. Enjoy the internet with no limits or borders. One account lets you connect up to 6 devices, secure them all in any combination. It's just a click. Using NordVPN is as simple and intuitive as making your morning coffee.
That's simple, Ian.
That easy.
Take control of your internet experience today with NordVPN. Right now, you can get a 2-year plan at a huge discount at nordvpn.com/CU podcast. And when you use code CU podcast, you'll get another additional month free. It's risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. Again, that's nordvpn.com/CU podcast to take control of your internet again. All right, Ian.
Pat.
You work in an independent game store.
I do work at an independent game store.
You help run the show. You've done it now for what, over 12 years? 13?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah, I think close to 14 years, actually.
And you've seen the highs and the lows and the price trends and the pre-pandemic prices, COVID reigniting some interest in consoles. So it's interesting then to see a Wired article come out asking or stating independent video game stores are here to stay. Despite rising digital sales in the pandemic, retro gaming and tight-knit clienteles are keeping smaller shops alive while other retailers falter.
So this is an interesting article because the pandemic has had a huge impact on small video game stores. I can't say universally, but I am willing to bet that the majority of independent game stores out there that are well run, keep regular hours, and it's a business less than a hobby. I would assume that most of them have seen a large increase in profits over the past year. So this article is interesting to me because if the pandemic had never happened, I'm not sure we would be having this article would be the same.
No,
would be the same.
I don't think so.
I don't always necessarily agree with the doom and gloom aspect, or the doom and gloom viewpoint that independent stores are going to die
in general.
I don't think video games. I don't think that independent video game stores are necessarily on their way out. I think the boom for independent video game stores is over.
And we're 5 years past that.
Yeah, far past that. But when you look at something like, say, not for resale, I don't think it's. What would you say the overall view of not for resale was? That
the documentary executive produced?
Yeah.
There's an endpoint to this, and the retail shop owner said that directly on and off camera. Like, there's an endpoint in time when the value of physical media stops being a thing. By generation, it just stops being collected to the same extent or bought. So there is a natural endpoint when it comes to this via the consoles themselves. So it may not be next year. Could be 5 years, 10 years, there will be less interest overall. And that I do, in general, agree with. And we've seen it in other hobbies where there's a retraction of whether it's model trains or models in general, where generationally there's just less interest and it goes away. Not saying they all go away, but a chunk go away.
No.
And in the documentary itself, before we ended post-production, 3 of the stores that were interviewed went out of business by the time they were interviewed versus when it came out. So I'm not saying they're all the same effect, but it's not nothing.
I think there's an endpoint, but I think there's always going to be a market for some. It just depends on how well some of these are run compared to the others. I think some of them are more set up for
success. They have a better outreach, for
a longer run,
better clientele, sort of better communication.
I agree that there's an endpoint. I just don't know if it's that soon. Anyway, so what this is talking about is how basically, and this is a lot of stuff that I've said before, that even though digital sales are taking over how games are sold, that is not really affecting these stores yet because they are selling things that are not really, even though they're all video games, it's two different markets. There's the physical market and then there's the digital market. And it is getting harder to bring people into a store for modern games, but it's been very easy over the past year at least to bring people into the store for old games. People have wanted something comforting, they've wanted nostalgia, they've wanted something that is familiar. So that's where we've seen a lot of this business.
But that was an extraordinary circumstance over the past year.
Sure, but it's still
something that is real and palpable, and people are
you can sit on your ass at home and you can order it offline, or you can go to the store and get it, but you can't turn on your video game system and say, give me this, and have it delivered directly to you. And I think some people like leaving
for the old stuff.
Yes, people want the, especially during something like the pandemic, where you're feeling crazy and you haven't been going out and doing stuff. You want that instant gratification. You get that idea that you want to play Sega Genesis. You're going to go out, and if you can, you're going to go to a local store and you're going to buy that Genesis instead of ordering it off the internet.
So you've said on the podcast that in the pandemic, you had people come in and say, give me literally any console, PlayStation, Genesis, what do you got?
It's not like they were like, give me anything, but people will come in and they'll run down a list of like 3 things and they'll leave with their third choice.
So the year before, we'll just say in 2019, what percentage of people were doing that versus afterwards, where they had a list of we'll just say acceptable consoles that they would walk home with versus a particular one?
I think it depends on the shopper, but it's always going to be far less than it was.
Sure. So something happened last year. Obviously, people at home, more time on their hand, maybe stimulus money, where I want to reconnect with this because it was not trending in that direction for certain consoles.
Sure.
For years and years. So we talked about that before.
But like I said, it's still people come in, they like to browse, they like to talk. It's why record stores exist. It's why people don't do all of their record ordering online. But it's odd. So the whole basis of the whole title, independent video game stores are here to stay. I don't think they're going anywhere soon. I think you have to specify what you mean by independent video game stores, though. Ones that focus mostly on retro, I think, actually will be around longer than ones that tried to be a direct competitor to GameStop. The article actually mentions, the scenario that we always encounter. It's that you kind of end up forming an unofficial alliance with your local GameStop. People aren't coming to your store to look for what GameStop has, and GameStop doesn't have what you have.
Sure. Real quick, I do know one. It's not evidence, but I do know one store that did close last year during the pandemic. I think they closed in the summer. I won't say who. I do know one. But I'm also not going to say that. Well, a lot of small businesses suffered. A lot basically though got money to help pay employees and stay open. Money that was basically like a free loan to help. So I'm not saying without that they would have closed. It definitely helped businesses stay afloat during it.
Sure.
So it kind of hopefully it balanced it out, because obviously with the pandemic being closed, some would have closed. So maybe it balanced out, but I don't have the data on that. How do you measure that? How do you measure ones that would have closed anyway or got an extra shot in the arm? I don't know.
Right.
But you had to bring it up because a lot of places did get basically free money to stay open and pay employees. So they talked to Josh from SideQuest. We brought him up before. He shipped me that nice Mario behind you.
Right.
Find My Keys Mario. His store is in Portland. He said in the past few years, Josh has not been too concerned about the digitalization of games and big box competition. In fact, selling retro games in the storefront has been so profitable, it made him quit his original day job working as a car salesman. I wonder, though, if this will help, because what we said at this point, and for years, Ian already said, do not open up a retro game store. Do not open it brand new at this point.
No, you can't open one brand new because there's no way to acquire the back stock. There's no way to get the stock for a reasonable price.
Unless it's here. Unless you
already have it.
And it sounds like Josh had that when he first started. So that almost everyone has to have that to get into retro. Like how do you get into it if you don't have a collection? It's kind of tough to acquire that stock, especially because you bought the stock for pennies on the dollar over decades, like a lot of these collectors did. Like Joe Santulli was collecting since the 80s, so he opens a store. It makes sense. They talked to Dave Kalin of Game Over Video Games in Austin, Texas. I feel like I've met him probably at some point at some convention. He started his business in 2005, long before the days of easy Amazon buys and digital downloads. Since then, his small store has expanded to over a dozen locations throughout Texas. Wow.
That's a lot.
Okay, I believe David runs the Classic Game Fest. I believe that's that same David. Okay, yes, I met him. He says the secret to business survival is a need for social interaction amongst gamers. Whereas Amazon and major retailers might offer easy online purchases, David is convinced that a store has flourished by prioritizing the in-person experience. Well, they're also offering different things. For Amazon, you're not going to Amazon to buy old retro games for the most part. You're coming to the store. For us, our relationships with customers doesn't just end at them buying a game. We want to start a conversation with folks about games and create a place to go hang out. Gamers, just like everyone else, need social interactions too. I would bother Ian for hours at a time. That's why the podcast started. I'd go to Ian and we'd talk for like an hour and a half in between customers. Yeah, talk about shit.
You can't downplay the importance of the social interaction, but that is also something that I think that has been very heightened in the past year.
Sure,
people look forward to going to stores that they truly enjoy going to, because even the people who are, being responsible and are in and out and, minding how many people are in the store, they need some social interaction. Some of the only outside trips that I've done that are outside of groceries and work during the pandemic were, I've been making like a once a month trip to the local record store, because it's nice to shoot the shit with Michael for a little bit and pick up some music. I could do it online. I don't need to ever leave.
So you became the pat to the Ian in the store. You're not talking to him. Before.
Yeah, and I don't talk much, but it's just nice to nice to be in the same room with someone else who, like, if I have a question about this, I can ask him and he's gonna know. So
Ian, you cherish our old talks at the old Voltaire shop, and at I used to love the Newport location so much.
The Newport location?
Well, I just liked the fact that it was right there.
I liked the Voltaire location.
Well, I like both.
Yeah.
But I mean, I like being able to walk and see you on a Wednesday, or with Frank drunkenly going,
sure.
Hey, Harvey Birdman game.
Yeah, on Wednesdays that was always nice.
And then we give you a ride home.
Yep. Yeah.
That was nice too.
Fun.
That was always save me the Lyft or the Uber. That was the thing that we do every Friday. I give Ian a ride home for most of it. It was great.
Yeah.
If we were there until 8. Then famously one time, I always got to tell this story because this shows how ornery Frank is a nice guy. He gets ornery when he drinks sometimes.
Yes, he does.
Ornery. He gets a little bit bad, I'll just say. Now, I don't want to destroy your image of Frank. So the one time we're driving back, this is probably like 2015 or so, 16. I'll never forget this. Ian knows the story.
Yes.
I was going to say, I'll pick Ian up at 8. I just go down to Frank. We go down to the bar. We'd have a dinner.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like 2 miles away from Ian, going back to go to Frank's. I usually hang out with Frank for a little bit afterwards. I go, oh no, Frank, I got to turn around and pick up Ian. I forgot. And Frank was like, nah, I'm not doing that. Stop. Got out of the car about 4 miles from his house. Three like 5 miles at night. He did not want to wait for me to turn around and pick up Ian, which would have took 5 minutes.
We're talking a few blocks.
Like 12 blocks.
Yeah.
Like, he did not want me to wait. And so I went back to pick up Ian, and Ian's like, where's Frank? Oh, no, he jumped out of the car.
Yeah, he
to walk home.
Out of the car and walked home.
Because he did not want to wait. So I picture, by the time me picking up Ian to drop him off, he probably would not have reached his house by then.
Oh, no. Yeah, he was probably waiting. It probably took him forever.
He probably had another mile to go at that point. It's just a funny story. I don't think I told that on the podcast before, or not in a long time, but I'll never forget that, speaking of local game stores, when it comes to that. And they talked to a couple other owners, an owner in Albuquerque, and another one, J&L Games. So, like I said, it's kind of it'll be a weird sort of thing, because we don't know where we'd be at if we didn't have a 100-year pandemic event to sort of give this a weird social shot in the arm, and people having stimulus money, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
We don't know. But I'm happy. It's good, but I'm still not bullish over the long term on a lot of these shops.
I'm more positive on it, I think, than
You're more
you
positive
are.
because of this event?
I think I'm more positive on it than you are. But I think this article is taking a lot of the good business that we got from the pandemic, and it's extrapolating it to mean a little bit more than I think
it's
it does.
Not putting it in its proper place.
Yeah, I don't think it's in the proper context. That's it.
Because there was that point in time where you looked in the back of your shop and you'd have 20 Super Mario 3s sitting there, 25
Sure.
of them. So like we're talking about a time when like people didn't want these popular games, and now a weird event happens, you couldn't keep that in the store potentially because people are like, oh, I want to play that. I'll buy the Retron HD and I'll get the Super Mario 3.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just the reality of it. We look at the price charting prices on these games, and it's in black and white. Summer 2016 was the peak. After that, game prices go down for a lot of these 80s and 90s consoles. We're not even talking about the pre-NES, which is always garbage. I don't think people are running out to buy Atari 2600 games during the pandemic. That didn't make the crossover.
Sold more of them during the pandemic than I have in the past few years.
All right.
Literally, I've just sold more of everything than I have in the past few years. Not nothing.
It's a special, not nothing.
Hasn't been popular.
It's a special type of desperation. You're like, I gotta play Centipede on the 2600. Give me that card. Let me rummage through the dollar box, rummage through the dollar bin, and get those copies.